Hello, welcome to 21 This Week's Eve of Election edition. I'm Susan Heltemes, filling in for Casey Aiken. Coming up next, governor's races garner great attention. Brown versus Hogan and Montgomery political changes on the horizon, perhaps? We are joined this week by Elbridge James, board president of Progressive Maryland, past chair of the Montgomery County Republican Party, Mark Uncapher, former Republican State Senator Gene Roesser, and former Democratic delegate and Maryland Majority Leader John Hurson. Stay tuned for the inside scoop and parting shots next. Welcome back. As the 2014 midterm elections near an end, there is much attention being placed on gubernatorial elections. At the present, Republicans control 29 states, while Democrats hold 21 governorships. These seats are widely viewed as stepping stones to the House, Senate, and of course the White House, and are often a barometer of the party's strength. Gene, one of the races being closely watched is in Georgia, where the Republican incumbent Nathan Deal is being challenged by State Senator Jason Carter, grandson of former governor and President Jimmy Carter. Will this seat flip, or is there going to be a runoff in December?
Governor Deal is running for his second term as governor. He has a very strong background in public service and politics, 17 years in Congress, and overall has a pretty good record. His opponent is Jason Carter, grandson of President Jimmy Carter, 39 years old, completing his first term in the state Senate. This should be a slam dunk for Nathan Deal, but he's got issues, ethical issues that are dogging him. And Jason Carter is taking advantage of that. He's focusing on that and on education issues because the governor cut education funding. It's a very, very tight race, like 46%, 44%, 46% for Deal. There is a third candidate. His name is Hunter, Andrew Hunter. He is the only non-lawyer of the three of them. He's a nanotechnologist, has his own firm, or former CEO, and he has that about 5% of the vote. So it could very well be a runoff. And just as a sidebar, I called the Atlanta Constitution today because I was looking all over the place for endorsements. They returned my call. I was astounded. They do not endorse, which I thought was interesting.
Okay, well, Mark, another race that's gotten attention is the buzz about a fan postponing a Florida gubernatorial debate. Republican Governor Rick Scott finally did debate his challenger, Charlie Crist. Now, Crist is a former Republican who's now on the Democratic team, and it's viewed as one of the tightest races in the country. So, is it going to be Scott or Crist in Florida, and why?
They've had three debates. But the most interesting debate in Florida is the debate between Crist and Crist, because the last time he ran for governor, he was pro-life, he was pro-Second Amendment and anti-tax, and now he's the reverse of all of those things. This race has been so close, you could probably flip a coin and have as good a chance to figuring out who's actually going to win.
So who do you think is going to win?
Flip a coin. The polls in this race have been consistently within 1 or 2 points. It's hard to tell.
So far we've got two races that could be really, really close. Now, another one that is most interesting, and that's Wisconsin. And if you'll recall, Wisconsin made the news when Scott Walker wreaked havoc with unions, but made it through a recall and is now being challenged by Democrat Mary Burke. And she's one of the few candidates who rallied her troops with President Barack Obama this week. Will Scott prevail, or is the next governor of Wisconsin going to be a Democratic female?
I want again, what my colleagues say, it's almost too close to call, except for we've seen signs during early voting, both in Georgia and in North Carolina and in Maryland, where early voting is up. In fact, across the country, there are 3 million voters this year, early voters, and 20% of that voter came from young voters and voters who did not vote in the 2010 elections. So across the country, there is that new element that's coming into play, and that's why I'm saying there's a lot closer races now that are more up for grabs. Florida's the one I just don't know about, but in Georgia, and in North Carolina, and in Pennsylvania, these races could go
But I
Democrat.
want to know about Wisconsin. Who's going to win in Wisconsin?
Wisconsin is the pivotal one because, in fact, again, the money efforts are being put in behind the current governor, and it's the rallying of the troop and what labor can do for the Democrats, which makes it hard to call because we would expect the turnout last time to put the governor out of office.
Okay.
It didn't.
So, John, in the last one we're going to talk about, and it's a most intriguing race, is because Republican Governor Sam Brownback's leadership, or lack thereof, in Kansas has caused Republicans to endorse the Democratic candidate Paul Davis. What's up with this race, and is Kansas going blue this year?
You know, this is Judy Garland all over again saying, we're not in Kansas anymore. To Toto, it is an incredible situation. You've got 4,000 Republicans who have signed into an organization who are against Brownback. I mean, it is an amazing situation. Here's what's happened. Brownback passed major legislation and forced it down the throats of the legislators in Kansas, even Republican legislators, to really reduce taxes that caused a huge budget deficit, which caused a huge cutback on schools and teachers. So everybody's sort of really angry at him, including Republicans. So it is a very, very close race. Actually, the Democrat has been leading in all the polls up until, but it's only 2 or 3 points. These are all razor-thin elections. But Brownback's in real trouble because he's pissed off Republicans in that state. And the other thing that happened, Mark, that was really important, and I know some of these guys, when they voted against Republicans who voted against him on the tax stuff, he purged them. He ran really conservative members against them and purged the party of the most liberal Republicans, and that has really set the state on fire.
And I think one of the things that I've read about in the Kansas race is that their bond rating is just
they lost their bond rating.
It's interesting. I mean, the other race where a Republican's likely to lose is Pennsylvania, and it's Republicans who are not supporting the
And
governor.
on that note, we're going to cut off right here because we've got the most interesting race going on right here in Maryland. And it started out with a hard-fought battle in both primaries with Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, the Democrat, now duking it out with Republican businessman Larry Hogan. Now, Mark, this race is the only really contentious one in Maryland. With a statewide, yes. Yes, you're right there. With a single-digit lead at the moment for Brown, early voting is over, and while more Republicans voted early, so did Democrats. So why Hogan? Is he going to do it?
I think it looks very encouraging. There are some other polls that go, it's all within the margin of error at this point. I think one of the things to take a look at, you mentioned early voting, votes have been roughly proportionate to the electorate in general, Republicans and Democrats. Hogan campaign has always known that it's not going to be Republicans that are going to elect him governor. It's going to be crossover votes from Democrats, and the indications are very positive that independents and Democrats are going to vote for Hogan, and Hogan will win.
Okay, now, Elbridge, one of the issues in this campaign that has come out has been gun control. Now, the Brady Gun Group endorsed Anthony Brown this week in front of the headquarters in Bethesda, and the NRA gave Hogan an A- on its report card. Now, is this issue going to matter to the voters of Maryland?
No, it's not going to be the gun control versus the other issues. It's going to be how those candidates reach their constituency and what they do to personalize the campaign and have their constituents know that they're going to be in their corner. We're talking about door-to-door getting out the vote. And the NRA is not going to get out the vote, and neither of the other parties going to get out the vote. It's going to be their organizations going to have to get out the vote. And whereas for Hogan, it does look encouraging in some viewpoints. In other viewpoints, if Baltimore turns out, if Prince George's County turns out, and if Montgomery County stays even a distant third, and especially with the lieutenant Governor candidate coming out of Howard County, I'm very confident that Anthony Brown will be the next governor.
And Howard County does have a lot more voters this time
Yes.
in early voting. Now, Jean, the Post endorsed Brown, the Gazette endorsed Hogan. Hogan will have Governor Chris Christie here for the third time this weekend, while Brown has had President Obama, President Clinton, Secretary Clinton, and on Monday, Mrs. Obama's going to be in Baltimore. So do any of these things really matter, Jean?
I think it's very interesting that before the primary, just before the primary, Lieutenant Governor Brown confidently said that once he won the primary, he'd take care of this little molehill. Well, this is no longer a little molehill. It's quite a mountain for him to climb. And I am just so pleased with the way Larry Hogan has conducted his campaign, and I think that he will prevail.
Okay, now John, Hogan worked for Ehrlich as his appointment secretary and has a record, while Brown's been the lieutenant governor for 8 years. Should their records in these roles make a difference to voters?
Let me be very clear. Records should always make a difference. I mean, people should look at the records of these people, but the records here are not equal. I mean, you've had a lieutenant governor who has spearheaded major efforts, both as a legislator in the legislature and as lieutenant governor on health care. Larry Hogan was appointment secretary. That's basically a bureaucratic position, in terms of appointing people to offices. There was some, controversy about Ehrlich's appointments, but it's not the same. I mean, Anthony Brown has a much more policy-oriented record than Larry Hogan. There's just no doubt about that.
The most important thing that he was assigned was a flop.
Well,
and that's implementing health care.
Well, Jean, I have
and
total
secondly,
respect for you.
Larry Hogan is a businessman. He knows the
You're
real
right.
world.
That's a very good point.
Listen. We served with. We know that
You and I
Brown-
both served under
Right,
Ehrlich
and I respect Brown.
and understand. But listen, there was a lot of controversy when Mr. Hogan was appointment secretary. There was allegations that they were ferreting out Democrats to fire them within the state bureaucracy. There was a lot of controversy. That has not been part of this campaign, but it's not a good record
There were
under Mr.
2,000
Hogan.
of them who have been identified, who
So
were gotten rid
it's
of
an
as
issue.
merit
So-
employees.
But I want to go back to the
Well,
fact
that's
the electorate.
different. That's different. His Governor Ehrlich had to downsize. I mean, he had to
Yeah, but
downsize.
you don't search out Democrats to
Listen,
fire them.
I was in the Maryland Department of Aging. I served with Hogan
you
too.
did. That's right.
And we were charged with 5% reduction in the department. That was state government, and I can tell you that the one or two that I let go, it was fair.
Right.
It was fair.
Jean, I
So-
would never suspect you of doing anything unfair. But I will tell you there were serious allegations
Okay,
against
I
Mr.
just want to
Hogan's
say one more thing
department.
about Hogan. Just a minute. One more thing about Hogan. He has turned this campaign around because he has made the lieutenant governor focus on economic issues. And Governor Brown certainly has no record there, since he just was Governor O'Malley's lieutenant governor with 40 tax increases. So he really changed the theme of this campaign.
I agree. I agree that Larry Hogan has run a very good campaign. I really do. And we all know it's very close. I don't know what's going to happen. It is all about turnout. I mean, it's
Yes,
going to
it
be
is.
about
And that's my
Elbridge-
point. And that's my
And that's
point.
why they bring out the
Elbridge,
heavy
let's
hitters.
let Elbridge.
Yes,
The,
Elbridge.
thank you, dear. The campaigns have to get to the average person. Average person really doesn't know or care about history.
right.
They want to know what's happening now. I agree that Hogan's message has resounded with some of the constituency, and more of the constituency than the fact that now Anthony Brown has to say, okay, let me get my position on this clear and straight. But once that is done, it's still the relationship that the average person believes they might have with or have had with the next governor. And that's what gives Brown an advantage.
Well,
He's
if-
been in the
If
spotlight.
anybody has a boots on the ground campaign, it's Larry Hogan. He is all over the state nonstop. He is connecting with just tons of people.
Well, I agree
And
they
he
both
came
are.
out to Potomac, had a big parade on Saturday. I think he's been to every parade in the state. I don't believe Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown was there, but he was all over that parade. And he's a terrific campaign.
Okay, now
We both have great candidates.
Okay, so we're now at the end. Mark, who's going to be the governor next Wednesday?
I think Hogan will.
By
do
how
it.
many points?
Oh, I'll take a little
Point
bit.
one.
I'll take,
Fast,
I'll take
fast, Mark.
as long as it's more votes than Ellen Sauerbrei
Okay,
got.
Elbridge, who's going to be the governor? And by how many
Anthony
points?
Brown, and it's going
Gene?
to be by 7 points.
Jean?
Larry Hogan, I don't care by how much.
John?
I think it's going to be Paris Glendenning's margin against Ellen Sauerbrei.
Oh,
Whatever
dear.
that was.
And on that note, please come back after a short break for more 21 This Week. The county council is currently all Democratic. So Mark, Will Berliner, Rice, Katz, Navarro, Hucker, Elbridge, Florine, Leventhal, and Reamer maintain this Democratic stronghold, or is a Republican going to slip in? And if so, who and where?
Did you get all of them in?
I
the
think I got
question?
them
I
all
think
in.
you did.
I think I got all 9 of them.
Let me go out on a limb and say that there will be a Democratic majority on the county council.
That's about as safe as you can get. Okay, now Elbridge.
They're all elected. They're
all
re-elected.
elected again?
Elected or re-elected with Hucker being the new candidate.
And Katz.
And Katz.
Sid Katz.
And Sid Katz. Well, Sid Katz is like my neighbor almost. You know, I've known him for a long time.
And yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jean, would you disagree with that, or John? Is the council going to remain all Democratic?
Yes.
Okay, so then we have a second. Who's going to be the next county executive? Anybody?
The next county executive is going to be Ike Leggett.
Yes. Yeah.
Jean or,
Yeah.
or Mark, do you disagree with that?
We'll have a hearty competition.
What do you think, Elbridge?
Oh, it's Ike Leggett.
Okay. So then we may have Mr. Shalik back on the show then soon.
It's possible.
Oh, it's
Yes.
possible. Okay. We're all so delicate tonight. I just can't get over this. Okay, now, the current delegation to Annapolis is also all Democratic. Jean, is the Montgomery delegation going to remain all blue as they head off to January to Annapolis?
I think there is some promise in a few races. In Legislative District 16, which covers largely Bethesda, isn't it?
Yeah.
And some of Silver Spring, maybe a little Chevy Chase.
Little
No
bit of
Silver
Chase.
Spring.
No, so
Spring,
okay.
yeah.
Legislative District 16 has Rose Lee running for delegate. She is very well qualified, beautifully educated, and she's an expert in health care.
Okay.
So she has a good shot.
And we have to cut off there, Jean,
And District 14 is very promising too.
for the Senate.
For the Senate. Frank Howard.
Okay. John, do you agree?
I don't know those districts very. If there were going to be Republicans elected, it would be in 16 or 14. So
Maybe 15. 15 has a good organization. So.
Okay. Well,
I don't see 14 now.
you would know 15 better than me.
okay, so now, surprises. Panel, when we wake up Wednesday morning, are there going to be surprises? Let's start with you, Elbridge. Any surprises?
For Montgomery County?
Yeah, or state of Maryland?
No.
Okay,
No.
Jean, do you think there'll be any surprises?
I would not be surprised if Larry Hogan won.
Okay. John, your surprise. You think there'll be anything that is really
Well, I'll
good?
do a national surprise, and I'll do
Okay.
a Maryland surprise. Nationally, everyone should be watching New Hampshire and North Carolina, because if those two states elect Republicans, they close at 7 o'clock on election night. If they elect Republicans, it's going to be a big night for Republicans.
Okay.
If they don't,
Okay, so your
won't be too many.
state surprise.
my state surprise, I agree with Gene.
Okay.
I think there is a significant possibility. I think it's doubtful,
Okay.
but I think
We
the
got to cut you off
governorship-
right there. Mark, you
I-
have
I
2
was
seconds.
I was going to agree with John about New Hampshire. That's a race that's become
Yeah.
a real real possible upset race.
Okay. So we're going to cut up there. We're going to go to parting shots right after this short break. And now with parting shots, Elbridge.
I'd like to praise the Montgomery County NAACP and its current leadership, Anita Powell. She stayed away from partisan politics, and she's focused on the issues that affect the community, current and going forward. Politics are here for today and maybe tomorrow, and then after that are gone. What's happening in our communities is here today, tomorrow, and hereafter. I like Anita's focus on putting attention on helping out the poor, the disadvantaged, and trying to get a cooperative effort between the county, the municipalities, and then the citizens, in fact. So I applaud Anita Powell.
Okay, Mark.
Hats off this week to the Maryland Public Policy Institute that released a study on a strategy to improve the Bay. They have looked at the sources of nitrogen, which is the real source of problem with the Bay, and identified that the top-down strategy we're using in Maryland that's spending something like $16 billion could be done, that the whole effort could be done much more effectively by focusing on where the pollution is actually coming from, which is from the Susquehanna and is being held at the Coingo Dam. If we dredged there, we could do much better by the Bay for a lot less money rather than the strategy we're using now.
Okay, Jean, you're up next.
I have a quote from the Baltimore Sun about Larry Hogan. Mr. Hogan has performed an invaluable service by forcing Mr. Brown to address the most important issue of this campaign, to secure Maryland's future. This campaign, as Eldridge has said, twice at least today, it depends on voter turnout. We have more Republicans in Montgomery County than in any part of the state. Republicans must turn out in force and vote. And don't think that your vote doesn't count. I actually served in the House of Delegates with a delegate who won by 1 vote. And Larry Hogan will do better than that. Thank you.
And Jean forgot her pin tonight.
Yes, I had the most beautiful pin. It was from the 1996 Republican National Convention where I was a delegate, and there I was with Senator Dole and Jack Kemp, who were the present and vice presidential candidates.
And she forgot it. John, you're up last tonight.
I have the same parting shot that Jean had, which is you absolutely have to get out and vote. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, you know, they say don't complain if you don't vote, and I think everybody on this panel agrees with that. It's all about getting out and being part of the political process. That's why we wear these buttons, because we believe in it. And it's extremely important that you vote. And as much as Jean is arguing that get all those Republicans out, you know, we need to get every Democrat out to vote. It's extremely important.
Actually,
please make sure you vote.
What it is, John, is if you don't vote, don't bitch. Okay, as you've heard tonight, this panel is passionate about politics, and we're all wearing buttons from past campaigns. Tonight, where we may have disagreed, but we all have one thing in common up here tonight. We all want you to exercise your right to vote on Tuesday. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Let's show Maryland that we care and raise the turnout rate to new heights, demonstrating that midterm elections and local races matter. Sometimes people forget that. Thank you for joining us, and see you next week for Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. Until then, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, watch us on YouTube, and be sure to come back here on Channel 21 Tuesday night starting at 8:30 for local coverage of the elections. It's going to be fun. For 21 This Week, I'm Susan Heltemes. Bye for now, and Casey will be back next week.
The 2014 gubernatorial election is almost here. Make your voting experience a pleasant one by following these tips. Know your polling place. Review your sample ballot. Decide how you will vote. Mark your sample ballot to use as a guide before arriving, and vote mid-morning to avoid long lines. You may also vote in advance of Election Day, during early voting or by mail. Remember, your time, your voice, your vote.